Hello there. All right, so welcome to the stream. Today I wanted to go through some projects that I had done in the hopes of doing some kind of a portable Raspberry Pi thing. A lot of this grew out of the fact that, excuse me, for 3 years, I live in like central Rhode Island, a little south of Providence, and I had been commuting to Boston by way of the commuter rail, every day for work. And one of the things that helped me to retain my sanity, such as it is, was doing writing code, right? So I had gotten what I called a throwaway laptop, which do I have it? Yeah. And I had mentioned this, I think, previously in another stream, but let's pretend I hadn't. This was my throwaway train laptop. It's a Dell Inspiron 11-inch. Came with Windows pre-installed, which I promptly corrected and put Ubuntu Mate on it. I got it as an open box for $150 at Best Buy, and it's okay. It's a dual core Atom or Celeron. Is the sticker still there? The sticker is not there anymore. But anyway, it's a like a dual core, fairly low grade processor with a couple of gigs of RAM, and that's about it. It's basically like Chromebook level hardware, which was sufficient for what I was doing. I was just basically running Apache and MySQL as a means of testing the code that I was writing, because I was working on web apps primarily, and so, and Apache's only serving one person, it's me, and I didn't need network connections. I didn't need an extraordinarily high amount of display resolution or anything like that. So it was all right. But I also thought, gee, it would be nice to be able to have something that's got a little more guts to it, at least in terms of CPU and some I/O and all that kind of stuff. And of course, I'd been playing with Raspberry Pis for a couple of years by that time, and I thought, gee, it would be cool to have something that doesn't take up quite as much space on the rarely available tables, that would allow me to maybe use a better keyboard and maybe have more display resolution. Not necessarily for having hugeness, but just to be able to fit more pixels, because when you're writing code, sometimes it's easier to make sense of what's going on if you can see more of the code at one time. And so I run this thing over and over in my head, and I arrived at the idea of, gee, maybe what I could do is build a lunchbox, right? Like something akin to the old Osborne's, is Commodore 64 SX. I guess it was the SX, but or the Zenith. Was it 171? That had the flip down keyboard, and it basically stood like a lunchbox, like an old, a lunchbox that you might remember from elementary school, as I do. And so I kind of toyed with that in my head a little bit, and I thought, well, one thing I could do is I could take like a 10-inch, proper HDMI display and rotate it 90 degrees into portrait mode, so that which you know, going back to the old Macintoshes was thought of as a good way to display documents, right? Text. So since I'm writing code, which is basically text, you can definitely see more context of what you're doing if you've got more vertical space. And I figured that a 1080 display rotated to portrait would have enough width then to give me at least 1024 of width. So, because it's 1080, right? So it's a little more than 1024. So, anyway, I toyed with that idea, and I eventually came up with, let me see. Oops. It's terrible. Oh, the production value. There we go. So, the thing that I had come up with was the lunchbox. And this is basically the lunchbox. This is like $120 1080p 10-inch display that's supposed to be oriented like this, right? It's got 75 millimeter VESA mounts on the back, but as you can see here, it's basically, it's got a fairly small footprint. And the idea here is that the tables on the trains, the space is at a premium, and you're constantly fighting with other people for space. And, you know, there's much like people sitting in airline seats in front of you that recline and restrict your use of the tray table for a laptop. You know, somebody else across the table from you may have a 17-inch gaming laptop, and they've got their screen kicked back as much as they possibly can, and that of course limits how much space me with my little 11-inch display can deal with. So the idea here is to have minimal depth this way, and have as much cutout under the display here as I can really get away with without losing balance. To kind of tuck the keyboard back against here. Now, I had fiddled with this. This is like the third or fourth iteration of... Oops, sorry about the bump there. This is like the third or fourth iteration of this design. And this is made of... what do they call it? Draft board. So I did the design in LibreCAD, exported it as a SVG, and then sent it to my Glowforge, which is a laser cutty thing. Glowforge.com, if you're interested. They're very, very expensive. I happened to get on board when they were still doing, like, I can't remember if it was GoFundMe or one of the other crowdfunding things, but anyway, I got in at a much cheaper price, and it's a neat gadget. I mean, it really is. One of the things that concerns me about it, though, is if the company goes casters up, it becomes a very expensive, very heavy paperweight. But until that happens, it's pretty cool. And basically what it is, you know, they have these proof grade materials that they've established what the laser power levels are supposed to be and all that kind of stuff for various thicknesses and whatnot. So there's a QR code on the sheet of material, and the camera inside the laser doodad, the Glowforge, sees that QR code, figures out what type of material it is, and sets the laser and the cutting speed and all that kind of stuff appropriately. Which is handy. That takes a bunch of steps out of it for me. And as I've learned with 3D printing, working through all of the, tweak the settings, tweak the settings, tweak the settings, and then it never works properly. So, generally speaking, the Glowforge has been a boon for doing these kinds of projects. But essentially, this is made of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 panels, and I don't know if you can see. So these little brown dots are the edges of the plate that the RasPi actually sits on. So this is a RasPi 4 4 gig unit, and it's got the regular I/O exposed on this side, and the GPIO is this is so difficult. So the GPIO is available right here, and the video ports and the power port are on the back, quote unquote back, the display side. So they're kind of difficult to get to, but the primary display is this one, and you shouldn't have to muck about with that. And I do have a micro HDMI to regular HDMI adapter. I don't know if you can see it, but you can't. Just loose in there. And my plan was, in a later iteration, to use this void here to put battery to both drive the display and the RasPi. Now, of course, we all know RasPi 4s are desperately power hungry, which is problematic. And the display runs on 12 volts. So there's a couple of things that have to be worked out there. And I ended up getting laid off from that job that I was going to Boston for. So that lunchbox ended up being more of a small form factor or small footprint desktop all-in-one. And I use it. I'm not using it right at the moment, but yeah, it works. And I'll power it up and give you a little bit of a taste of what it looks like working with the RasPi in portrait mode, because it is a little bit weird. Let's see. All right, so let's do that. So this is the RasPi booting up, and I just have a Logitech, one of these keyboard and pointing device doodads, wireless. Okay, so we got the blinky cursor thing, and come on. Yeah, I haven't done the firmware update on this, by the way, so this may be very slow to boot. Oh, I just saw a flicker in the display. Well, this is embarrassing. Nope. Wiggle the mouse? Nope. Well. Okay. Oh, here we go. Ta-da! All right. So, it wasn't dying, it was just slow. So, Now, it's not networking, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. Let's try programming, and let's go into Genie. So, if you're doing, let's see, is this, no, that's not giant, that's not giant, that is not giant either. So I don't have any big, yeah, I don't have anything big here, I don't think, unless fossil. Where is brain and brain? Where is brain? Huh. Ah, well, this is because I'm sorting by the wrong thing. Do I have fossil local on here? I do not appear to. Nope, I don't. That is weird. That is very weird. Do I have any tree build JS? Yeah. I don't actually have any big code on here, but as it should be fairly apparent, this does afford one a lot of vertical real estate here to display code. That's weird. So anyway, that's kind of what was going on here. Now, if you were so inclined as to want to like watch movies on this, then it would be a very disappointing thing because you would have the letterbox stuff going on top and bottom here and a little widescreen movie there. So that would be a bit crap. So that's the lunchbox. And the lunchbox has, as I said, it's kind of been relegated to use primarily as a desktop machine. And I don't know if I'm ever going to go back to trying to do it, trying to use it as a portable. We'll see. But originally I had planned to do a bag around it. And so on the side of the bag there would be a pocket that you could put the keyboard in, standing on its end. You know, the plan was to have some kind of battery and power regulation to handle the 12 volt and 5 volt requirements, either stepping up from a LiPo or stepping down from a lead acid. And related things like that. And again, the goal was to try and minimize the footprint on the table. Once that requirement kind of went away, I still liked the idea of having a portable RasPi that I could use as a, you know, a serial console into whatever, or to, you know, pull up in an emergency as an SSH machine. Like, you know, I don't know, we've had a power outage and I need to shut down the machines in my rack, you know, that kind of thing. Or for use in a data center, you know, because I didn't know what my next employment adventure was going to be, and it might be Linux administration. And if it was Linux administration, then, you know, they had local data center stuff and I needed to go to the data center. Well, you know, I mean, I know that's less of a thing today than it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago or whatever, but it's still kind of a thing. And so, yeah, I decided I still wanted to have something that would give me minimal capability to get into other machines. And so that brought about the NurdPerse. Oh, yeah. I should shut this down and get it out of the way. Oh, God. Yeah. So I'm just shutting down the lunchbox machine. Okay, so that's down. Good. We'll unplug that. Shut off the keyboard. Hey, there's only one of me. Cut me some slack here. All right. So, what is this NurdPerse of which I speak? It's this. It's a little canvas bag with a mattress ticking lining, just to be different. And in here is a 3.5-inch display with a RasPi Zero W and regular, what do you call them? Like power bank deals from like Staples. They're 10,500 milliamp hour power bank doodads. So let's see if we can get right in there. So this has a single magnetic closure down here. So that just closes like that. The handle is stitched on, you know, with a pretty serious kind of cross stitch, you know, formation there. And part of the reason for having the handle firmly attached is so that you can hang it from a rack or from the back of the seat on a train or a bus or whatever, and see what's going on. So, as I said, here are the batteries. There's one over here and one over here. And I can just Velcro that off. Oh, dear. I thought I'd stitch that on. All right, so I got to fix that Velcro. But anyway, so this can open fully if you need it to. And kind of the secret to the success of this deal is this. Now, pardon the blue tape, I never glued this together just because of the fact that the display is actually sandwiched between layers of material. So there's this layer here, this frontmost layer, which is clear acrylic, and then the rest of it is the wood, quote unquote wood, the draft board, which is like MDF. And so yeah, the display is sandwiched. There are some ventilation holes. You can't see them. There are some ventilation holes on the back here, on the back of this other acrylic panel in the back, to let air circulate, because the display does get kind of warm with the backlights. But the RasPi Zero W is right down here, and you know, there's 4 screws to hold it in. This is the power lead. This is the USB that connects to this hub, and this is HDMI mini to HDMI snaked around up to the top of the display. So it's all fairly well self-contained, and you could just put this on a desk and have fun with it. These edges are all, I don't know if you can see the dimples in the tape here, but these edges are all finger joints, and the layers of the sandwich all fit into slots. There's tabs that fit into slots that are organized on the side plates. And yeah, so in the back of the bag, there's room for, this is just a serial to USB cable, which is handy for consoling into devices. This is a Bluetooth keyboard and pointing device. And I'm having some trouble with the Bluetooth on the RasPi Zero W. And one of the things that's nice about this is not only is it Bluetooth, but back here there's a spot for a dongle to do kind of like the Logitech Unified Receiver, or Unifying Receiver, to do 2.4 gigahertz over USB, which is what I've got plugged into the hub back here. Now, of course, with this USB hub here, you can also do Ethernet if you need to. So basically, all of your connectivity options are covered if you need them. Again, battery pack. Each of these battery packs gives somewhere in the ballpark of 8 to 12 hours, depending on how heavily you're using the Wi-Fi, of usability, which is great in a data center setting, because there's likely to be situations where you're leaving your like console machine just sitting there unattended while you fiddle with something, and so knowing that you don't have to keep sleeping it or whatever is really nice. This is just a handy little dam in the bottom to keep things from sliding around in the bottom of the bag. And the lining, as you can see, maybe, is mattress ticking. And the idea behind that is I didn't want all of the seams from the shell of the bag to interfere with your ability to actually fit things in the bag. So yeah. And this was a pattern that I came up with myself based on, the what I plan to put in the bag, and like the idea of this flap. Part of the idea here was I wanted it to be as reasonably weatherproof as it could be, given the fact that it's made of fabric. So I wanted it to be able to shed water, and you'll notice that there's kind of a lip here on the bottom, and the idea was if water, exposure to moisture, like, oh, I've got to put the bag down and there's a puddle here, oh crap, you could do like Flex Seal or Rhino lining or something, some kind of material like that to apply here to keep the bottom from absorbing water. So yeah, this is a groovy little gadget, and I've used it a fair amount, even though I'm not working in data centers too much. There have been a few instances of we have a power outage, or we have some other kind of cockamamie thing that requires that I need to be able to SSH or do some other kind of similar connection to a machine somewhere, and I don't have room or the patience to deal with a laptop. So you just plug that USB in there, and it boots up. And I've turned on the keyboard, and it's in the green indicates that it's in 2.4 gigahertz mode, and it's the green is on steady, which means that it's connected to the dongle, and with any luck, this will finish booting shortly. Let me see if I can get us a little bit closer. Now, you're seeing a lot of moire effects here, which is, I think, primarily a consequence of the discontinuity in the resolution between the display on the NurdPerse and the resolution of the sensor. Maybe if I shut that off, or shut that and that off. Yeah, that's kind of hot garbage. There's so many things working against getting a good picture here. But, you can LS, you get a listing of files. Oops, no, you have to log in first, stupid. Oh, God. Okay. So, you know, you can do an LS um, and I apologize for this, the quality of this image. Maybe if I back away and then zoom in, it'll be less garbage. Yeah, that's a little better. So, yeah. So, one of the things that I use on these kinds of machines is, what is it? YCD. Um, YCD curses in particular. And so this is really handy for doing Wi-Fi connections on the command line. So it's a curses based thing that allows you to. Oops, sorry. This config is right arrow. So you know you can go in here and you can set all your Wi-Fi stuff, how you authenticate, and you know your key, and I didn't want to show that. Yeah, so that's pretty much that. So um, wow, I'm trying to save. There we go. Okay. So yeah, that's the NurdPerse. So let's see if I do quit and clear, and that is more or less that. That's the NurdPerse. And just on a side note, let me organize things a little better here. I need some light and a little bit of that. So I highly recommend these keyboards. You can get these on Amazon. They're I think about $29 or something like that. It's got a touchpad, which is not just a boring touchpad, but you can actually do two-finger gesture stuff for scrolling, and taps for clicking. And then it's also got these shoulder buttons here, and those are also usable as left and right mouse clicks. It's got a scroll wheel, which is freaking fantastic. Arrow keys, and really, you know, your full set of characters is accessible on the keyboard here, as far as like pipes and backslashes and slashes and all that kind of stuff. Some of the keys are in weird spots, but yeah, your single quotes, your double quotes, you can actually code with this. It's terrible, but it beats nothing. It beats trying to write code on your soft keyboard on your phone. So if you're looking for a Bluetooth keyboard, I highly recommend this one. And I don't have a link to it handy right now, but if I can remember, I'll see if I can stick a link. Oh, actually, I think I have stuck a link in the description for this stream. I forgot to mention in the description of this stream. Actually, before I say this, let me double check. Boop. Just because watching me do these things without actually seeing what I'm doing is great. See what this is. Nope, that's the screen. So that hopefully is the keyboard. Yep, okay. So, if you look down in the description under NurdPerse, the third link is to this. Highly recommend. Yeah, they're $29.95. And so let me do sudo shutdown -h now. Oh, not Shudtown. I think I'm going to buy lots of real estate and call it Shudtown. And having the arrow keys is freaking magical. So that's pretty much the NurdPerse. It's a handy gadget, and I don't use it all the time, but you know, one of the things that I like about it is the fact that all of the stuffs, right? So you've got the keyboard that fits happily in the back of the bag. You know, if you need a couple of cables or dongles or whatever, that can fit happily in the back of the bag. And close it up, and ta-da! I mean, it's pretty compact. You can fit it in another bag if you need to. And you can, like I said, you can hang it on the back of a seat in a train or a plane or something like that, and you're not dealing with that flippy the problem of the clamshell screen in a conventional laptop. It's certainly not for everybody, and it's certainly not, you know, the most elegant solution to all problems, but yeah, it works pretty well. All right, so let's now take a look at the Cyber Deck. The Cyber Deck. Now, this is a thing that, you know, all the cool kids are doing now. And I get it. I mean, it's interesting. It's kind of a fantasy thing, you know. Oh, well, Fallout and, you know, post-apocalyptic computing and EMPs and all that kind of stuff, you know. But following in the idea of the NurdPerse, I wanted something that I could do a little more with. Obviously, the RasPi Zero W is handy for SSHing into stuff. It's handy for doing a little bit of VI, a little bit of network troubleshooting. It's great for that kind of stuff. Serial consoles and things of that nature. But it's hot garbage for doing anything graphical. If you've got to get on a website, if you've got to download something, you know, or you've got to hook up multiple USBs, or you need Ethernet, and you don't want to deal with a bunch of dongles and stuff like that. So, you know, I saw all the cool kids were making cyber decks, and a lot of them were using Pelican cases. Now, as I said when I was talking about the NurdPerse, one of the things that I thought would be handy was weatherproofing, or weather resistance, water shedding kind of thing. And, well, gee, what's better at that than a Pelican case? So I got me a Pelican case, and I got an orange one because who else is going to be walking around with an orange thing, right? So hopefully this will help it stand out. This is one of the labels from when I was last stream I did. I was talking about my IT inventory thing that I'd been working on, and this is a label that was generated from that. Will it focus? Yeah. So I've made some improvements to the thing that now it does. It generates asset tag numbers sequentially. when you create a new device in the system, and it does a couple other things that are nice little improvements. But anyway, this label is from that. And this is a fairly small Pelican case. I've seen some people do cyberdecks in bigger Pelican cases than this. But I thought, why do what everybody else is doing? So that's the Pelican case. And, you know, it's got the two latches on the top. You flip it down. And there's another one of those Bluetooth keyboards. Ta-da. It's just Velcroed into a cutout in the foam in the lid. Right? And the idea here is not that you type on it this way. It's just, it's stowed out of the way. As you can see here, there's 4 USB-A's, Ethernet, and a power switch that does nothing. And I'll explain that in a moment. And then this is a charge jack, ventilation holes, because between the Raspberry Pi and the display and the power doodad, this can throw off some heat. So I definitely wanted to be able to vent that. This is just a strap, because this plate is just a friction fit. And on the rear, it's a nightmare. So this is a PiSugar Pro 2, which is oriented toward connecting to a Raspberry Pi 3/4. I guess Raspberry Pi 2 would also work. But anyway, so this is the PiSugar 2 Pro, and it's got a USB-C. See, can you see that? USB-C charge port and a USB micro B charge port here. And then there's a couple of switches on the top, and right? I need pointing thing. Right there. Right there is the power switch. Now, I understand that if you've just got a naked Raspberry Pi and you've got this thing screwed to the back of it, and it really is a tight fit, like the power is actually transmitted, and the serial communication, because this thing has some sophisticated, quote unquote sophisticated, power monitoring and charge monitoring and all that kind of stuff, and it talks back to code running on the Raspberry Pi. But it uses pogo pins to connect to the back of the GPIO header, leaving the regular GPIO header free for doing other things, which that's great. You know, good on you, PiSugar 2 Pro developers. But this power switch, which again is there, and it's actually a single pole double throw. Yeah, I believe it's single, or maybe it's, yeah. Anyway, it's a switch that can go to one of two positions, and both of the positions mean something. Yeah, the problem with that is, in this application now, I have to pull this plate out to turn the thing on or turn the thing off, which is a pain in the ass. My original thought was, okay, I'll just put this rocker switch in here, and I'll connect to the pins on that switch and make magic happen. And I tried that. And the PiSugar 2 Pro is around $45–50, and what I ended up doing was killing a PiSugar 2 Pro, and I don't see it around here. But I tried to remove. Well, first I tried to bypass the switch or run a different switch in parallel. That was hot garbage. Then I pulled the existing switch out, and in the process peeled some of the circuit trace off, which was not so great. And tried to stick it back together and attach a switch. And it sort of works, and it sort of doesn't. And I'm suspecting that either by virtue of hooking the wrong kind of switch up to it, I like melted the brains of it, or that I damaged the circuit board. Either way, neither is good. So that's shot. One of these days, I'm going to go ahead and get another PiSugar 2 Pro and take another stab at this, and hopefully have a little more luck than I had this round. But in the back here, as I said, this is a Raspberry Pi, or maybe I didn't say it's a Raspberry Pi 3B Plus, but this is a Raspberry Pi 3B Plus, so it does the Bluetooth and the Wi-Fi. All of the big I/O is brought out to the front panel of the plate by these little extension cables that you can get through Amazon, and links are in the description. The PiSugar Pro 2 link is in the description, and this display, which is a 4.5 inch, 5 inch, maybe it says on here, 4 inch. So this is a 4 inch HDMI 800 by 400 display. So it's not real high resolution. Oh, let me turn this on so we can demo it. So again, this plate is friction fit. And it's going to take a moment for the Raspberry Pi to boot up. It's not, like, the resolution isn't great in terms of being like, oh, well, I can do all the things. No, you can't do all the things. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. Oh, right, too much. So you're not going to be doing all of the things on this display. There's definitely going to be some limitations. But you know, in a bind, you know, you can go ahead and pop a web browser and you know, get on your Wi-Fi, you know, pop a web browser and look at DuckDuckGo, you know, Adafruit Industries, oh hurrah. And, you know, as we all know, Chrome is a memory hog and a storage hog and all that kind of thing. But, you know, if you're in a bind and you need to reinstall your Ubuntu, right? You can go to Ubuntu, if you can spell it right. And you can download an image, and in the USB doodad, you can write it to a thumb drive and actually, oh, fine. You can track me, Ubuntu. Fine. But, you know, you can go over here, you can go to download, and you know, here we are. So you can download your image and do your magics. The PiSugar 2 Pro is definitely an all-right doodad. I, despite my complaints up to this point, it really is neat. One of the things that it does is, actually, I can show you. All right, so let me get back on the screen here and do that. Does that help at all? Oh, that helps tremendously. All right, let me get the keyboard out here. Let me get out of the browser because that's hot garbage. I mean, it's better to have a browser than not to have a browser. But let me see. Can I do Control-Shift+? Where did the plus sign go? Oh, there it is. Okay. Will it let me? It won't. Son of a bitch. Maybe if I go into... Well... Yeah, and this... Oh, zoom in. Ah, there we go. Okay. So I just want to get a little bit better. Oh, God. Screen. So I have a script on here, or I have a config for screen. Maybe if I back this up just a little bit and it has something to focus on, it'll be a little less terrible. A little less terrible. Okay. So, if you're not a user of screen, I highly recommend it. Much like the 1962 Ferrari 250 GT California. 1961 Ferrari 250 GT California. So, you know, this is top, H-top, which is handy. And this... Oh. So... Yeah. So... My screen RC file, which is the config file that gets read when you're launching screen, kicks off a number of windows, and in one of the windows it runs a watch command. So a watch, if you're not familiar with it, is a command in Linux and Unix variants and whatnot that basically just like periodically runs a command, and typically it's done for checking to see what ports are in use, or what processes, like if a process is running, or if someone's logged in, or whatever. And in this case, it's running PiSugar get.sh, which is a little script that I wrote to poll the microcontroller on the PiSugar 2 Pro to find out what the battery status is. And so it's showing, you know, the battery state. It's, you know, 92% charged. Battery level is okay. It's not charging. Now, this might be a firmware fault. I'm not sure. Or it may be a consequence of the fact that I'm using the USB micro B as opposed to the USB-C connector for charging. This requires further investigation, but with the current limitation of 2.4 amps, I believe it is, on the USB micro B, when the Raspberry Pi is running with the display, the current draw is probably maxing that out, and it won't charge. It'll just pass the power. It'll take the battery out of the supply sourcing and just run off the charging voltage. And it's not until you turn off the Raspberry Pi that it actually can charge the battery. Which is one of the reasons why I wish I could get the power switch to work, so I wouldn't have to actually take the plate out of the box to turn the thing off. But as you can see, every 30 seconds it pulls. It just updated, hurrah! And it tells you what the battery voltage is and the battery current and all that kind of stuff. And it also gives you, you know, the uptime, the number of users, and all that kind of stuff. And I know is, well, 10 users. How is it that you have 10 users on this machine? It's because there's 9 screen windows open. Control A, Shift quote. Yeah. So there's 9 screens, and there's my original login. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. So, the PiSugar 2 Pro, I don't know why I have to like walk through that every time. I'm old. That's probably what it is. So the PiSugar 2 Pro is a really neat gadget, and it is, now I haven't tried all of the RasPi battery doodads out there, but in my limited experience, this is the best one that I've come across. It does have its faults in terms of that power switch. Like, even if they just had pads there that you could solder another switch to, that would be huge. That would be great. But they don't. So, on the bright side, now I have an hot air rework station, which will facilitate removing that switch, hopefully, without damaging the board. I have a previous iteration of the plate. This is without the vent holes, and the screw holes for the display are a little bit too close together. So I have reworked this. But if there's any interest, I can post the either the SVG or the LibreCAD files for this. Comment. Let me know. Let me know what you want to do. Because the Pelican Case is readily available on Amazon. I think the link for it is in the description, under the Cyberdeck heading, as well as links for the USB keyboard and the USB extenders and the Ethernet extender and the display. I think all that stuff is linked in the description. So, just as a kind of a side note, since we're getting close to maybe wrapping here, unless somebody has something they want to put in the chat and say, hey, how about you do this? I've kind of covered the 3 things that I had intended to cover. But there's a side thing, and the side thing is this. Now, as anybody who knows me knows, I have a lot of Raspberry Pis, and I use them as like scratch servers. I use one for my actual DNS here in the house, DNS and DHCP. I have one as a print server. I have one as a Kodi box, vintage gaming, you name it. I'm using RasPis for them. This stream, I use a RasPi for putting up graphics, for keeping my notes, and all that kind of stuff. So I have RasPis, and one of the things that I've run into is if you have one RasPi, it's fine. If you have a bunch of RasPis, it's a pain in the tuchus. Loan word. Because cases for Raspberry Pis don't lend themselves to amalgamation, generally. And the ones that do often have, like, threaded rod, Jiminy Christmas, threaded rod that goes through the mounting holes for all the Raspberry Pis with little spacers or other kind of crap. So if you've got to get the middle one out, you've got to take the whole damn thing apart. That's highly irritating. It is, trust me. So, what I decided to do instead was I wanted to make a thing where I could mount a Raspberry Pi on a sled, for lack of a better word, that I could mount into a frame. And I could reach all the connections I needed to reach, and it would stay there with some reliability. And if I needed to remove a particular RasPi from the thing, I could just unhook the cables and slide the little bastard out. Hence this thing. Now, I've only got one RasPi in here. This is kind of a demonstrator unit. But it's got holes in the back here for the mounting of 40 millimeter fans, if you were so inclined. These are fancy pants Noctua fans, but the 5-volt 40 millimeter fans. And I don't know if you can see it or not, but this exposes the power and the HDMI and the audio for a Raspberry Pi 3 2 type thing. I haven't tried it with a Raspberry Pi 4 as far as exposure of the HDMIs. It may only expose one of the HDMIs, which would be sad. But if you look here, so this is a little clip, right? It's just a thin piece of the wood, and you lift it up, and the little baby comes right out. And you're left with this. And this is the little sled. Now, this little piece here that sits between the standoffs, that is there to keep the sled centered between these grooves here, right? And these little guides are just cut out from the bottom here, so this leaves you a little ventilation hole. This is a handle, right? You can either write or print a label to go on here, or you can hang a little tag off if you want. This is a... God, I can't see. I need my eye bones. This is a Raspberry Pi 2. Oh my God, I can't see. I gotta get these drilled out or something. I don't know. So yeah, it's a Raspberry Pi 2. Fits good. And it slides right in the thing. And this was like the home game version of what I ended up trying to do with the lunchbox. This was a precursor, this project here. And this was all done with a Glowforge. I also did another variant of this that stacked two of these, one like this, and the other one, so this one's here, the other one next to it like this, so that you have all your video and power stuff coming out that side and coming out this side. There's no collision there. And these are actually stackable. The lid here, there's, if you can see, so the top of this panel has a little nub that goes into this hole in this plate, but it only goes halfway. So if you took another pair of these sides and another back and the plates in the middle, so there's a plate between every pair of RasPis. This will hold 6 RasPis. There's just a plate to stabilize. Can I show you? I can show you. So if I take Lilith back out and take out the plate underneath Lilith. Oh, come on. There we go. And the next one. Okay. Whoop. Let's not make that do anything we don't want it to do. So this is attached to the sides. This is attached to the sides, and it's just with tabs into the side plates, right? And the idea there is just to give it some structural rigidity, keep the sides from bowing out, all that kind of jazz. Because there's not a whole, I mean, this material is 1/8 of an inch thick. And that is the only thing that grips the edges of these plates. So you don't want that bowing out, because if it does, the whole thing falls apart. So why did I bring that up? Oh yeah, so if you wanted to stack, you'd need the side plates, the back plate, and 2 of these middle plates and another top, right? So you'd lock, if you were standing it up like this, you'd lock the 4 nubs from the 2 side plates into the half occupied hole in the lower top plate, if that makes any sense. And huzzah. So you can stack 24 Raspberry Pis if you have that many, and you can figure out how to power it all, because that's one of the kind of pain in the neck things about multi Raspberry Pi installations is you either need one big power supply that can supply the multiple 5-volt 3 or 4 amp supplies, or you need unreasonable numbers of power strips that will handle the wall warts that will be required to power your stack of Raspberry Pis. Which is better? I don't know. But I do know that I think I've covered everything that I wanted to cover. So unless one of you has something else that you would like me to cover, I think that is going to do it for me for today. If you have any topics that you would like me to cover, or anything you'd like me to go into more depth on, put it in the comments. If you have any comments or questions about the stuff that I talked about today, please put it in the comments. If you enjoyed this, please like it. If you didn't, and if you didn't like it, maybe tell me what you didn't like. Again, in the comments. If you like this content, please like, share, and subscribe. And I don't know exactly when the next stream will be, but it will most likely be on a weekend, either a Saturday or Sunday. And yeah. So, thank you for watching. And I look forward to doing more of these in the future. And I'll be revisiting the Ribbit 65 at some point in the not too distant future. I did a respin of the Genio board, the general purpose input output board that I designed for the Ribbit 65, and so hoping that those will come in about a week. And maybe I'll do a build stream of one of those and try it out and see if it actually works. But I think that's going to do it for today. Again, thanks for watching. Any questions or comments, put in this thing. Like, share, and subscribe. And we'll catch you later. Thanks.